Star Trek, the ultimate franchise. These are the voyages of 3 veteran Trekkies, Rich, Ian, and Toby. Their ongoing mission? To explore the vast Star Trek universe, to seek out new perspectives and fresh debates, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. Beyond the Final Frontier.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Final Frontier, a Star Trek podcast hosted by me, Rich Matthews, and as ever I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. Ian Spelling.
Hello everybody.
And Mr. Toby Weidman.
Hello.
This episode we're returning to a ranking of, in this case, our favourite guest characters.
We should also state it's one-off performances. A character, but they could be in multiple episodes as long as it's part of one story.
And it's a character that comes into the screen from the left side, not the right side, if we're being specific.
And they have to board by shuttle. They cannot be beamed in.
Right. Beaming in is a cheat. So.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because there's all that debate about whether it just atomizes you and you're not actually
And
you
what if they
anymore,
burst through the chest? Does that count? Because that's from the bottom of the screen instead of the left or the right.
Well, that's true. What if it comes out the back? Not that we're satirising anything in particular, just our own natural pedantry.
Us? Pedants?
And on that note...
I'm sorry, what was that word?
Pedant.
No, you used a different form of it. Pedantry.
That's the noun.
Wow, there's the word of the day, 4 minutes into this freaking thing? Wow! Pedantry.
Okay, so, reflecting pedantry, it's like I listened to a podcast where there was a big debate about whether piratical was a real word, and I was just sitting there going, yeah, it is! As in to be a pirate. But anyway, so as ever, I'll begin the countdown, and we'll go through our ranking of our top 7 guest characters. I mean, I am going to probably name the actor as well. I'm sure you guys are too, just because they're sort of meshed in my brain that way. So my number 7 is Lieutenant Richard Castillo, played by Christopher McDonald in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 3 episode, Yesterday's Enterprise. One of the reasons I've picked this is it's perhaps my single favourite episode of Star Trek anyway, but also because he's often cast as slimy, unctuous, slightly upsetting characters and bad guys, and he's just a brilliant leading man in this episode. And he has to sell so much in that relationship, that burgeoning romance with Tasha, enough for her to be willing, when Guinan's hunch about her, that she should be dead, for her to go with him, even potentially to annihilation, because they've got these early feelings of love, and it's really nice and delicately handled and not overplayed and touching, and he feels heroic and brave and warm, and it's just really nice performance. Slightly diluted later by his turn as Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore, I have to admit, but and also he played the rather nasty husband in Thelma and Louise. But it's just David Carson brings out a really nice chemistry with him and Denise, and it's just lovely. And it's just a great episode, great sci-fi, great story, great all round, and one of my favourite single character appearances.
He was on my shortlist, and they do a really good job, a merger of both writing and performance, of just building that relationship between Castillo and Yar. You actually do believe that they are in love, as brief as thing is, it's sort of instant, and I think that's one of the highlights of the episode.
Well, this is the thing that's going to be interesting, because a lot of these characters that we're going to be talking about are contingent on the performance of the actor, one, and two, honestly, contingent on the chemistry with the regular that they're interacting with, or regulars that they're interacting with in the episodes. So if you don't have that chemistry in this episode, that doesn't work, and we probably would not be talking about the performance as well. But the chemistry that McDonald had with Denise was ridiculous, right?
Yeah. So much so that I remember thinking at the time, it's kind of amazing he then wasn't cast in Star Trek or something else. The way Robert Duncan McNeil was so good in the first duty, then
As Locarno.
Then he came back as Paris, and that's always pleasing when that happens, I think. And yeah, he was so good that I felt certain he might end up on DS9, but nope, wasn't to be. So Ian, you're number 7.
My number 7 is Trelane.
Oh, cool.
Squire of Gothos, TOS, of course. He's this exuberant, petulant little boy, and just so fun and mean. He dresses fabulously. Obviously, it was a Liberace thing going on there back in the day. He speaks French. I love tut-tut. And you broke it. You broke my sword. And again, you don't have the character without the performance. And William Campbell was just fabulous in it. And yes, of course, he played another great role in Star Trek, and then later reprised that role on Deep Space Nine. And yes, I know that you could argue that we had Trelane on Strange New Worlds, but that's not 1,000% confirmed, right? So I'm okay with this character being there. I find this episode relentlessly entertaining and just kind of fun and silly. Gives us that whole "is it a Q" thing as a result of The Next Generation. I knew Bill Campbell. He worked with my late uncle on a couple of movies and a couple of episodes of television shows. Trelane means a lot to me as a character and as a person in Bill Campbell. I thought he was terrific, and he was a great man, full of stories and full of life. And I don't even know that he was acting, playing Trelane.
It's interesting, isn't it, the whole Q discussion? So, because the fact they tried Q too seriously initially on TNG, and once they embraced the Trelane of it, the character came to life.
Yes.
And John Delancey could do so much more with it based on sort of modelling on that. So I think that's really interesting. That flamboyance.
Yes, and Delancey and Bill Campbell did like a little skit together, a Q type of thing where it was it father, son or not. It was really interesting back in the day. They did it at a couple of conventions.
Toby?
My 7th spot, I'm a little torn on this one. I've got 2 options and they're kind of like diametrically different in terms of like character. One is very much a fun character, and then the other one is sort of indelibly etched into my personal lexicon of Star Trek. I'm going to go for the second one, I think, because I think the first one will come up in a episode. I'm going to go with Commissioner Beale, played by Frank Gorshin from Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
Toby, really good choice.
I recognise that a lot of people criticise this episode because it's sort of heavy-handed in the way it scrutinises themes of like race, class, slavery and so on. But, you know, as an adult, I can't disagree with that. But you have to remember, I watched this as a kid, and probably the best way to get this vital message across, just really eye-opening and powerful. I think Lou Antonio as Loke delivers a great performance. It's Gorshin who, that image of his face is just seared into my mind. And I thought his portrayal of, you know, essentially a slave lord was just really impactful and disturbing, and it's a slow reveal. Star Trek played a huge part in informing my adult morality.
Me too.
And this is one of those episodes that, you know, really sledgehammered it home. Intolerance of any kind is just stupid.
Roddenberry's real legacy is what you just said. It was of the time. Yes, there are problems with various things, and obviously at some point when we get to talk about the women of Star Trek, there's obvious issues there. But at its core was a morality and a sense of striving to be better and to improve ourselves. That is a powerful thing that I think it'd be hard to underestimate its impact on the 20th century. So my number 6 is a standout actor in anything, but in this character in particular, there's something, it really harnesses his multi-layered and everything he does has a sort of subtext potentially, even if it's comedy like it was in that 70s show. And of course he's been in Star Trek twice before, once in Star Trek 6 and then in DS9 as a Cardassian. So my number 6 is Anorax. I'm never going to get if I'm saying it right because I rewatched the episode and people say it differently.
No, I think it is Anorax because it always makes me laugh because of the British waterproof coat.
In Star Trek Voyager's episode Year of Hell, as played by Kurtwood Smith. I mean, it's a great episode anyway, and the time ship and the temporal incursions element, and the setting up the Krenan Imperium is, and the plague, and all. In fact, his wife was killed. All the motivation is there, and it could have been really one-dimensional. It could have been really big, and God knows, Smith has that capability if he really wants to. Just watch RoboCop. But then at the other extreme, you have, likewise, you've seen him be very controlled, like he was as the Federation president in Star Trek 6. But it's this perfect harnessing of both sides of him for this, in this very dark storyline, and this character that could just be loathsome and flawed, but he brings out this. Well, I'm always loath to say humanity, because he's not human. Again, Star Trek 6 brings to mind, just listen to yourself, inalienable human rights. The very term is racist. So but he's absolutely great in that. And he's a standout in one of Voyager's best episodes anyway. So yeah, that's my number 6, Kurtwood Smith as Anorax in Year of Hell. Ian.
Death On. Gotta go with that one. He would be higher up if there weren't so many other more interesting characters to me. I just thought this was a really interesting episode, very Twilight Zone-ish in its own way, specifically a Twilight Zone where you had, characters trying to communicate with each other. But I just thought, again, we were talking about chemistry between actors. Here you have male-to-male chemistry, captain-to-captain chemistry, excellent dialogue, and no dialogue, speechifying and more or less silence. And I just thought your opposites here coming together for a common cause. Very Star Trek-ish, and I just thought Paul Winfield absolutely nailed this performance. Rewatching it, I'm not as big a fan of the makeup as I was originally.
DS9 did that though. Like DS9 had raised the bar on makeup, and then effectively Next Gen suffers a little.
Yeah, just a little. I think part of it is just modern technology makes it look not as good as it probably did back in 1990 whatever
on TV.
But I just thought that performance was really strong and a very interesting character.
My number 6 is Q.
Ooh.
But not the Q that you're thinking of. Specifically, Garrett Graham's version of Q for Voyager Season 2 Death Wish. This episode is controversial just by the nature of, the storyline, tackling assisted suicide. But I think it's done with sensitivity, actually, and it makes Janeway's impossible choice understandable. And I think, we're talking about chemistry. I think the interplay between the two Qs, because John Delancey comes back as well, and Janeway is really fantastic. At times just biting wit, and then at other times there's this pathos about it. And I think Garrick holds his own against John Delancey's Q and Kate Mulgrew's Janeway. And those characters were established, so they had something to lean on, whereas he didn't. He had to create this character. It's a one and done character. But I think there's a great deal of sensitivity, subtlety and intelligence in Graham's performance, and ultimately I find his character and his decision at the end very, very moving.
I'm just glad it wasn't Corbin Burnson.
Yeah, but Death Wish is I really like this episode. It's high up on my list of Voyager favourites.
Same.
Yeah, me too. It's a great one.
Good choice.
It's a perfect example of using a focused allegory.
And the other thing about that episode is, it expands the Q universe, and you get a little bit of insight into what the continuum actually looks like, and
yeah, it still doesn't make much sense to me that the Q continuum. No one's there. I quite like that though, that it's still a bit like, really, what?
And they never really fulfilled it. The Q and the Grey sort of did a little bit, but that wouldn't be among my favourites.
Okay, so my number 5 was an uncredited guest star across 3 episodes of Deep Space Nine. It's Frank Langella as Minister Jaro in let me get it right, The Homecoming, The Circle and The Siege, I believe, as the devious Bajoran minister who actually is secretly leading a military coup against the Bajoran government, aligning himself with the boo-hiss villain of all time on Star Trek, Kai Wynn. Was she Kai then? No, she wasn't Kai then. She was Vedic Wynn, wasn't she, at that point? And it was Rick Colby directed it, and he's always just brilliant stuff in that across the thing. And obviously Frank Langella is amazing. Even though shamefacedly my first experience of Frank Langella as a performer was Masters of the Universe as Skeletor. But even that he does quite well. And then his version of Dracula, which if you haven't seen, the 1979 version which John Badham directed, is very good. But in this, I remember his appearance sort of snapped my attention, which is always good, I suppose, when you get you cast a big name to some degree, someone with instant recognition, because it can bring your focus into full clarity. And that really helped the socio-political machinations that were depicted in that story. And for me it'd been approached before, but for me it was a real flag in the sand about DS9's intention moving forward. Ira wasn't in full control, but we already knew at this point that it wasn't intended to be the show, that was going to be Voyager ultimately down the pipe after DS9, after Next Gen went off the air, but really started to mine the political situation on Bejor and bring that into sharper focus. It was their first real nod to more serialized storytelling across three episodes. I don't recall a three-parter before this in Star Trek at all. And it showed that the show was going to go to places with more depth and more challenge than Star Trek previously had, that it was going to more overtly deal with some of the thornier allegorical issues the world faces generally, especially the terrorism aspect, the political upheaval, the roles that the multi-levels of government play and different agencies, and that's what, I mean, DS9 excelled at that, at having, even within alien races with different structures and different organizations with government representing different agendas and different purposes, and who was in power and who was not, and who had and this sort of flux of all these movements, whether it's the Cardassians and their civilian government, military government, intelligence agency, same on Bejor, and also ultimately Starfleet and the Federation. So I think this was where, and in the centre of this sort of awakening for me was Langella, who is a magisterial presence always, but is quiet and controlled and just effortlessly threatening. And his scenes with Louise Fletcher are just, chef's kiss, brilliant stuff. And yeah, I was excited when he came on screen, and it didn't disappoint. The storyline didn't disappoint. His character didn't disappoint. It was one of my favourite guest appearances on Star Trek ever.
One of mine too, but what was interesting was he did not want to be there. He got an offer for another project. This is my understanding. Got an offer for another project, asked Rick Berman if he could get out of the episodes. Berman said, no, you signed a deal. We need you to come in and do your thing. So he did, but apparently he wasn't happy about it. And that is why his name is not on the episode. Again, my understanding.
It was also claimed that he did it for his kids. I don't know whether that was spin to deal with that reality, but that was what I remember. That was what came up, that he agreed to do it because his children love Star Trek. But either way, if he didn't want to be there, class act, turns up.
Totally professional performance, and
Yeah.
Or maybe he channeled his anger into his performance, because that is a riveting, angry-looking performance that he gives.
Absolutely. And yeah, DS9 was always going to be the spikier version of Star Trek, but when it's actors like this, working with dialogue like that and storylines like that, I'm sure even Roddenberry would have struggled to criticize it. Well, given his history, maybe not, but I read it was fantastic stuff. So Ian.
Number 5. Captain Jellicoe.
Woo!
I just thought, great character, as good a captain as any captain we've ever had on Star Trek in any show or movie. Just rubbed people the wrong way. Got the job done, was a solid leader, strong, opinionated, forceful. Didn't seem particularly open to accepting advice of others, but, he was his own kind of leader, and it was a really interesting mirror that he put up to Picard and to all the other characters, including Riker, who had aspirations of being a captain, right? I don't want to be this guy, was my takeaway from this episode. And Ronnie Cox was just killer in it. Just a total asshole. You hated this guy, but you respected this character.
A very dynamic performance, it really is.
I thought that was great. Did we see him or hear him again later?
Yes. In Prodigy.
Whereas I followed the rules.
This was a bone of contention, listeners, for what could fit in, and I decided to interpret it as if a character recurs as a voice only, be that in a game or in an animation, that it wasn't the same.
Bending the rules like Janeway.
But I mean, the thing with Jellicoe is he does nothing wrong. Everything he does is right.
It's just tones. The tenor of what he does is just different.
My fifth spot is Lieutenant Melina Moreau, Barbara Luna from the second season of the original series Mirror Mirror. Again, this is just another one that is seared into my mind. Completely intoxicating, mesmerizing performance by Luna. She's seductive, duplicitous, resourceful, clearly intelligent, keen of mind. What was funny, I rewatched it. She doesn't even show up until about halfway through the episode. It's well into the
episode.
Yeah,
I don't remember it like that.
It's well into the episode before. I think it's just a unforgettable performance. And to paraphrase Kirk in the episode, he says he's never seen perfection, but she's as close to it as anyone could be. And okay, the outfit is revealing. It's clearly there for titillation.
He'd only not seen perfection because the refit hadn't happened yet.
But I think her character, she really holds her own against Kirk, and you buy that relationship as one-sided as it is. But she does stand up for herself. There's an element of a submissiveness about her, but you've got to consider that's a product of the patriarchal, fascistic universe that she lives in. But she figures out that it's not her Kirk before Spock, purely through a kiss. So I think that she's observant, intuitive, and smart.
So my number 4, again, is a reflection of my bending or establishing the rules of this theme. It is David Warner as Gul Madred in Chain of Command in Next Generation. Again, David Warner has appeared multiple times in Star Trek, but specifically as what's his name? St. John Talbot in Star Trek V, a very fey, inconsequential Terran ambassador on the planet of galactic peace. And then, more memorably, as Chancellor Gorkon in Star Trek VI, which I always found weird that anyone let them cast him 2 films in a row like that. But I guess he was in the Klingon makeup, and maybe he had something on Shatner. I don't know, but he got straight into them. But then, interestingly, it is actually this role in Chain of Command as a Cardassian interrogator where he's at his finest. This is not a favourite episode. It's a 2-parter because it's so hard to watch. It's so difficult in many ways, isn't it? And in the same way that when we talked about Jellicoe, that was uncomfortable. This was uncomfortable, and the effectiveness of the torture, the chronicling of the kind of mental attack and sleep deprivation and the use of the light, even though it's provided a seemingly never going to die meme on the internet, it's just such a brilliant piece of drama, and it's the kind of thing, if you get asked now, sometimes what I feel we lack in modern Star Trek, even the series like Strange New Worlds, which I really enjoy, it's this kind of episode, something which is, they're prepared to make you feel uncomfortable and challenge your expectations of what can happen and what can be done to a character, and to really hang everything essentially on 2 brilliant actors going head to head. And Warner raises Stewart. Patrick Stewart was always good, and of course he was, and he would have been good in that part anyway, but given someone like Warner to face off against, who, like all the actors who really shine as Cardassians, just beams through that makeup, the clarity of eyes, is just, it's a brilliant performance, horrible performance, horribly memorable, but one to me which stands out as one of the best on TNG's entire run.
I was going to say I couldn't agree more, but I could agree more because he's higher on my list. So I will get to that momentarily.
Equally, I'm staying quiet because he's higher on my list as well.
Okay then, Ian, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Dr. Timison from TNG's Half a Life. If you ask me what is among my most underrated next-gen episodes, everybody picks the obvious ones, right? Half a Life is a beautiful episode, and it's in large part because of this particular character. He broke my heart. It hit me hard in 1991. To your point, Toby, about being a child watching the original Star Trek, I was a teenager to a young adult watching Next Generation, and so it hits me even harder in 2025. Half a Life. He's this gentle soul who now has a reason to live, but knows he probably can't or shouldn't, and has to make decisions based on that problem. David Ogden Stiers, who I knew from MASH and a couple of comedies, always came across as like this tough, gruff, inhuman figure, and here, as I put it, gentle soul. He was remarkable in his performance. It was just subtle and quiet, and he had this really cool makeup on, but you almost didn't notice it because it was such a human performance, and I always appreciated that. And Majel Barrett, this is arguably her best episode.
I like the one with Odo.
That's up there. I would argue this is even more interesting because of the story that it tells, and as a one-off, I think it works better, whereas I thought her performance in that Deep Space Nine episode, while beautiful, was the culmination of that whole arc.
Yeah, I agree with that.
With Odo, which I always thought was a little silly until all of a sudden they took it seriously. The other thing is, I'd love to have a cup of coffee with Dr. Timison. And among the characters that if you said, hey, you're on a desert island, if we ever did an episode where we said, who's the character you'd want to hang with? In my top 5, this guy would be as well. Just because I think he's an interesting man and a good human, or a good soul. Again, he's not human, but a good soul. So a little bit of a wild card, but to this day, breaks my heart when I watched this episode, and it did again when I watched it last week.
My number 4 is from the original series again, the season 2 episode, The Doomsday Machine, which is one of my all-time favourite episodes. It's Commodore Matt Decker, played by William Wyndham. I think the episode itself is just a really interesting and compelling exploration of trauma and survivor's guilt, and how it can lead to obsessive and destructive behaviour, which traumatic stress. I've deliberately left off disorder because of an upcoming guest's definition of the term. It wasn't recognised until 1980 as a medical condition. I think in this case, it's sort of specifically, the story is connected to the aftermath of the Vietnam War. Decker is essentially Captain Ahab, hunting his intergalactic white whale. And I just a really compelling performance by him, because Decker is a mirror of Kirk, right? I think he outranks him. I think Commodore is a little higher than Captain, but he's clearly a skilled and proficient leader, but he's just become overcome by hate. At that, his human psyche is damaged, and all he wants is revenge for the fact that he is the cause of killing his crew accidentally, inadvertently, but that is what happens. His performance always poses the question in my head: if it had been the reverse and it had been Kirk in that situation and he'd lost all his crew, how would he have reacted? And I think that's an interesting question to ask. But I think the conflict between him and Kirk is great. I think the power play with Spock, commander of the Enterprise, is really well done. And I think Wyndham, he gives Decker, it's a man on the edge, basically. He's frantic, but he can still do his job. And one of my favourite scenes in Star Trek is the conversation with Spock over control, and his reaction to Spock saying Vulcans never bluff. I think it's just really well played, and the thing that sticks in my mind is his death scene, and it's sort of done in frames of different emotions, and it's, I think, similarly to Beale, it's just etched into my memory. It's just terrifying and haunting and tragic.
Interesting choice, I have to say. I agree with you for the most part, but I always found, and this has more to do with his face than his acting, if this makes any sense. I think they pushed the camera in a little too close at times.
It wasn't helped by the makeup and things they did to him.
I always just found the performance the character a little over the top.
I agree with that.
I think the performance was a little over the top, the makeup was a little under the top, and the overall effect for me was I didn't take it quite as seriously as I should have, or could have. Just me. I get what you're saying, but that all just kind of undermined it a little, and probably be on my list. But put it this way: I have a list of backups.
We've all got a list of backups for this.
Right. Well, yeah, it's interesting because we should discuss backups without getting into detail. Just share our backup list with each other. I think that would be really interesting. But totally get why you would choose him, but there's a reason why it's not on my list.
To counter your argument, I would say he's just the right step over the line. I think it suits where that character is.
That's why Baskin-Robbins has 31 flavors. Everybody likes something a little different.
Number 3 for me is my first original series entry. And actually, you both said things in your last one which suddenly resonated with my next choice. One, I would not want to have a cup of coffee with this character, ever, ever, ever. And they certainly had their own white whale, ultimately. My number 3 is Ricardo Montalban as Khan Noonien Singh in Space Seed.
I don't accept that as a choice because we saw...
I don't either.
You're next, done. You're out. Sorry. Toby, what's yours?
Why? Because it's his only time he guest stars in a series.
He returned. He got a whole fucking movie. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They named the movie after
I disagree with this choice.
Are you nuts?
Wow, man. I had so much
wait.
Things.
You're the King Poobah of this, and you're beyond breaking your... This is not stretching the rules. You just broke the Prime Directive here.
I love the fact we should have a Prime Directive. What is our Prime Directive?
Well, to stay within the rules, dude. Come on. All right, go ahead. Give me an abbreviated version of why Khan belongs on this list, because you lost me.
Well, okay, fair enough. I will take it, and I will include all this unedited, the challenge, so everyone can understand the pressures of doing such a podcast. Well, it's because, partly because he ended up in Wrath of Khan, because he was the obvious character to revisit. And as I said before, I struggle with a lot of the original series, but I always loved Space Seed as an episode. And while I do think he did improve it later, and I fully accept that perhaps this is a stretch because he does come back very memorably, but technically only guest starred in one episode of the series. And it's an interesting exercise in all the elements which normally throw me off about the original series, the fight doubles, the melodrama of it, the slightly dodgy representation of women in this, but there's something about that character and the magnetism of him as an actor that just bypasses that a lot. And I think that's when we talked about previously, Ian, you said how often the chemistry or the charisma of the guest star, the actor transforms that what could be, and that's what you're looking for. And I can't think of a better example of that. That character is fine, written fine, it's an interesting idea, but it's not that much different. It all hinges on how good he is and how electric he is.
I'm going to agree with you to a degree. Pretend we're not upset about this not being an applicable character.
I'll repress it. I'm very good at repression.
I will say the following. I think memories of his performance in Space Seed are influenced by our collective memories of how brilliant the character was and the performance was in The Wrath of Khan. Because I've seen that episode recently. Not too recently, because I didn't watch it for this, because I wasn't counting that, because I was following the rules. But I would say that I would be the first to admit that my overview of Space Seed is deeply influenced by my experience with Wrath of Khan, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So
Can't argue with that.
I think we see, no pun intended, the seeds in Space Seed of what's to come in Wrath of Khan, but I don't know that it's actually there in Space Seed as much as you are.
I think it is, but
arguing
I never saw it without seeing Wrath of Khan.
Which did you see first, Rich?
So I saw Wrath of Khan first.
Interesting.
Really good question, Toby. Really
Yeah,
good.
yeah, absolutely. So maybe it's that. Maybe you've hit the nail on the head, which is an interesting point that's almost justifies my including it against the rules,
No.
I think. God, you better not have any joints higher up in your lift. You better not have anyone sharing a spot now, Ian. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, I followed the rules
my-
exactly.
Well, the rule, I will give you this. The rules did change right up until this morning as well. So, I mean, I could, if we could just show people the thread.
Oh,
I
would
wasn't
like
even
to
sure how many characters we were.
I would like to
including.
point listeners to moments earlier when I was referred to as the Grand Poobah. Does this sound like the kind of respect a Grand Poobah warrants?
A grand shit bar, maybe.
Do you know what the
honorifics
Grand
to-
Poobah is a reference to?
Probably, isn't it The Simpsons?
Flintstones.
Flintstones,
Oh, even
wow.
earlier. Wow. there you go.
Animation, though. Well done. Good guess.
Cool. Anyway, we'll gloss past the fact that I accept that
This is disqualified.
perhaps. Yeah, so I only get 6. No, 6.
Edith Keeler, City on the Edge of Forever. She was selfless, warm, ahead of her time, hopeful, so much more. She humanized our womanizing hero in Kirk, right? We also know that you could get the sense that McCoy was attracted to her as well. And she also really tapped into Spock's human side, which I thought was important. And her death is just so damn sad. And it's so beautifully, that whole last few minutes of that is just so beautifully handled, from her being hit to, he knows, all of that. Just a powerhouse character. Forget the fact that she was also, those eyes on the screen, right? Joan Collins, just beautifully lit, just beautifully shot.
Yeah.
But they didn't make her sexy, right? They just made her warm and almost ethereal to my thinking. And I just thought it was a fabulous performance, a terrific, really intriguing character, and she brought out the best in our big three.
And she states the ethos of the whole show.
And yes, she does. So I would put her higher, to be honest. I almost put her at number 2, but another character we've actually already discussed is at number 2. And my number 1 is, I don't even think on your lists.
Ooh, gosh, that's
Just on
tease.
Edith Keeler. I would say, generally, I'm quite pessimistic when it comes to humanity.
No, I
But
never
then,
get that from you.
But then,
You grouchy
characters, yeah. Characters like Edith Keeler, fictional though they might be, always gives me hope. So it's the opposite, because I know there are real people like
Idealists,
her out there.
Right, but spoiler,
And-
she died.
I know. But there's a
What a good
very-
hope fucking did her, man.
That's a long spoiler.
That's not part of the
Did I
hope,
wait
though.
long enough for it?
But no, someone's going to be triggered.
Yes, there's an 8-year-old who's never seen City on the Edge of Forever is going to be pissed at us.
But I would say, and I think this refers to your point about she's not sexualized, really, is that she actually reminded me, or she reminds me a lot of my mother. She really does, and
Then I'm
maybe
doubly glad she's not sexualized.
maybe that's why I'm enamored with her. And
Oh, dude,
the psychoanalytic breakdown of
for his
this
own
conversation
sake.
is for another time.
Serious comment. I don't need him to go to his therapist or anything.
steer yourself out of this dive.
Oh, me?
Either of you.
So we can do the psychoanalysis of
A
another time.
respectful conversation, you dirty-minded bastard.
I've got no Oedipal complex over Edith Keeler, I promise you. My number 3, Armin Maritza, Harris Yulin, from the season 1 DS9 episode Duet. Again, it's another episode dealing with guilt and survivor's guilt, revenge and retribution. But I think the scenes between him, Harris Yulin, and Esther are just brilliant. It's an irrepressible duo, basically. Their scenes are exceptional. And you know, that's
top draw stuff.
Writing as well as performance. Maritza's inevitable breakdown when he sort of confesses and has to confront who he actually is. It's so compelling, it's so moving. He does a brilliant job. And it's as an episode, it's like, I think it's one of DS9's best, certainly from the early seasons. He's only not higher on my list because I think this episode rides on the coattails of another Cardassian. He wanted Maritza to survive. And I wonder, what do you think about that? How do you think that would have, particularly the impact on Kira?
It's interesting you said that, because I knew that as well, and I've thought about this, and I've always thought he's better off being gone for the impact it leaves on Kira. We don't have to question, did they ever see each other again? Did he have a further influence on her? Did they become frenemies or friends or something in between? I think, dramatically speaking, it worked better for the episode that he died as well. I think he paid his price for what he had done, and I think there's more value, again, dramatically speaking, within the terms and the context of the storyline, with him dying than with him being alive. I think you get that payoff with him gone.
I don't think he was lobbying for it to be changed because he wanted to return as the character. I think he actually genuinely cared about that character and what was going to happen to him.
Totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah. I'm not saying I wanted to see him again. I'm just saying what it left open for the character, what it left behind.
And by this point, we know that we did. I acknowledge just what you did there, Ian. That's great.
Thank you.
But also at this point, actors knew they could come back as a different alien if they really wanted to come back. So, for me, the reason I'm glad the character died is because it established the horrible sense of attrition that the show frequently illustrated, that there are always Cardassians coming out of the woodwork and Bajorans coming out of the woodwork who are implicated in all of these horrors over and over again. And every time Kira as a character is confronted by somebody Bajoran, Cardassian, either, then has moved on and reconciled it, or there's another one and another one. And that for her character, I think that built up a very solid sense of how the trauma isn't just internalized. It's there, and it revisits, and it keeps coming back, and that's what's so satisfying ultimately about her arc, especially with Odo and where it goes, and how through another war to some degree she gets to redeem herself internally. I think that's why I like it that way.
We've mentioned chemistry a lot. The chemistry between those two actors are just fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Harris Yulin.
Yeah.
He only died a few months ago.
So my number two we've already mentioned. So it's the other side of Chain of Command. For me, this is where Jellicoe comes in, because I hated him. I was with Riker all the way when I was watching it. But this episode is its own form of post trauma, because he hangs around in your head, and you do find yourself going, was he right? Maybe he was right. Maybe we are too complacent with the nice carpeted bridge of the Enterprise D, where everyone's pally and everyone's great. And it was a nice sort of prod towards the sort of realities of Deep Space Nine, the caustic friction that was generated there, and how even someone could still adhere to all of Roddenberry's ideals for Federation humanity and for the Starfleet personnel and be a dick. And that was kind of refreshing. And Ronnie Cox it exhibits perfectly how our anti-hero works, in terms of how charisma will allow you to forgive a wealth of flaws in a character, and how appealing, like he's frequently played in this era of his career, people you love to hate. His early part of career, he was always the nice guys, which is what makes this so interesting. That he ended up post RoboCop and then Total Recall and this as playing these authoritarian figures who. But interestingly, it was nice to see him return to apply that same persona that had been cultivated in movies to essentially a decent guy, just who didn't suffer fools, didn't want to get on with work, wanted to do it his way, knows his way works, and is happy to remove people who don't agree. And that was unusual in Star Trek, especially Next Generation Star Trek, where you had lots of bad morals, but they were normally associated with some horrible conspiracy or major flaw, not simply doing their job. And and as I'll often say about Star Trek, and the thing that is less present in Star Trek at the moment is competent people doing work competently. There is no one more competent than Jellicoe as captain of the Enterprise, because he doesn't do it for long and he does a bloody good job. It's a great single performance.
I really like I think one of the best bits is when he's negotiating with the Cardassians and then and we want Picard back.
Yep.
He's
You're
sort of
oh, thank God.
Throws it in.
Around to it, so yeah.
So Ian, you're number 2.
Is Gul Madred.
Cool.
Chain of Command 1 and 2. I felt like I needed a real villain on my list of 7 characters that we're doing here. I immediately thought of the Borg. And then, of course, I said, well, they're not a one-off, right?
No.
So can't include them unless I'm Rich Matthews. I also felt that was just too obvious. And, of course, like I said, she's not a one-off. But my next thought was Madred. He's just pure evil, total malice, completely cruel, brilliant, a master torturer, knows exactly what he's doing, does everything he can to break our captain. And the chemistry between David Warner and Patrick Stewart, even under these odd circumstances, was absolutely riveting as a viewer. The episode was just gorgeously shot. I mean, that is a stark-looking episode. The lights are just brilliantly filmed as well. Patrick Stewart goes there, and there's no doubt that Patrick Stewart isn't going there without being pushed by David Warner, more than holding his own. I mean, if you watch that performance, it's 2 world-class boxers going at it, and absolutely riveting, and just a great character who happens to be bad and certainly does not see himself as bad. And that's the hallmark of a classic villain, right? The baddie, the better the baddie, the more human he is. And the character resonates even now as well. I really, to your point about, I was just about to use the word enjoyed. I didn't enjoy these episodes. You can't enjoy them as a human being, watching the suffering that Picard goes through and the impact of that suffering on the other characters that we love, right? But just a chilling character. And if I have to pick one person I don't want to have coffee with, it's Gul Madred.
Oh, God, no. No, thank you. There are 3 cups of coffee.
That's right. 3 sweet and lows, and you will like them.
Toes.
My number 2 is my mum, as played by Joan Collins.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Edith Keeler, City on the Edge of
I wish you could see Rich's face right now. He's like, my mom? He leaned, like, it was almost 3D, like his head popped through the screen on my computer. Sorry, Toby, go ahead.
Well, has there been a more significant character in Star Trek's in-universe history? Because if you think about it, if she lives, the Nazis take over the world, there's probably no Starfleet, no Federation. I always wondered whether that was the kickstart of the Mirror Universe and the Terran Empire, because Archer does mention, I don't think it's ever been covered, but Archer does say in A Mirror Darkly that it was several hundred years ago that the Terran Empire was first formed, and that would sort of tie in with the time frame. It's a brilliant performance. It's tragic story. Joan Collins just excels as this person who Ian mentioned, warm, compassionate. I mean, she's just nice. And you can totally understand why both Kirk and McCoy become enamored with her. And yeah, we've covered it a lot.
And we'll cover it again. Yeah.
Right.
Because my number one, having said I'm not a huge TOS fan, is Edith Keeler from The City on the Edge of Forever. For all the reasons both of you already said, which is, if you were going to define a guest appearance, a perfect guest appearance is one that has impact, that resonates, that capitalizes on the actor's own natural charisma and ability, but also illustrates and illuminates and progresses the character dynamics of your existing characters, shows them in a new light and advances them meaningfully and also consistently. She is, especially coming to seeing her in this after having watched Dynasty, where she was, and at
you
the same
British
time,
bastard, say it right.
Yeah, well, and also I believe at the same time I don't think I'd seen, well, because I'm not sure when I saw it, I'm not sure how hard it was, but I knew of the films The Bitch and what was the other one she made that was like that? The Stud. So it was, from me, the baggage I brought to her in that role fought directly against what she represents in that episode. But from the moment she steps on screen, from the moment she glows and illuminates the entire episode, and that's what I think you see refracted back by Shatner and by DeForest and Leonard Nimoy. She is this perfect sort of cut through for what otherwise is quite a histrionic episode, if you think about it, especially D. Kelly's work. It's good, but it's very big by the nature of it. But something about pairing her with him in that state, and then Shatner's natural, slightly over the topness, it just all works, and it suddenly lots of things click, and she takes you through what is otherwise probably a fairly outlandish science fiction story for most people in terms of their ability to understand, because again it's geopolitical, it talks about the Nazis, it's based on history, it is time travel. The Guardian itself is a big jump for your casual audience, I would argue, but you get to her and she makes it all make sense. As you said, Toby, suddenly the fate of the universe, well, the Star Trek universe, hinges on this person, and it just makes sense. It absolutely fits, and that is quite a feat. And I would probably argue, from my point of view, as someone who's not as invested in the original series overall, that City on the Edge of Forever is the best single piece of pre-movie Star Trek for me.
Well, we both picked her, right? So.
I respect that, all of it, and including that last point. If you say to people, hey, I don't know Star Trek the original series at all, I have to watch one episode that represents Star Trek, the general answer is more or less always going to be The City on the Edge of Forever. I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah, right. So your number one.
Should we try and pick Ian's number one?
He said we wouldn't know what it was. So I'm guessing it's Mick Fleetwood as that big fish.
You were close. He was number 8 for me.
Iggy Pop.
Iggy Pop as a Vorta, maybe. How many more silly ones can we think of?
I'll let you boys play. Just let me know when you need me.
No.
I'm going to guess, and this is a serious guess, that it's Hallie Todd as Lal.
Close.
From The Offspring.
Close. It's Jonathan D'Arco as Hugh.
No.
Doesn't count.
No, true, he's back. Damn it.
Yeah. It's Maritza.
Oh, cool.
Duet is one of my overall favorite episodes of Star Trek, period. Mm-hmm. It is arguably my number 1, 2, 3 of Deep Space Nine. Harris Yulin gave what I consider one of the finest guest performances in all of Star Trek. Maritza, to me, is kind of like Deep Space Nine itself as a series. Dark, conflicted, controversial, compelling, very Star Trek-y, but very different from what Gene Roddenberry put out there, 30 years earlier at the time, and incredibly human as well. And if there's one character that I remember seeing that episode. If I remember correctly, I got a screener of it before it aired. And I just said, holy cow, this is going to be one of those episodes that people remember. And I remember trying to get an interview with Harris Yulin at the time, but couldn't. It's just a fabulous character. And again, one of the things I really liked, we're talking about impact on other characters. Here we're talking specifically Kira. And I know we'll be talking to Na Visitor. I would love to know from Na if this episode and the revelations and interactions with Maritza carried over into the development of her character, if she felt that was the case. Because I thought this was a pivotal episode for her character as well.
Absolutely.
So absolutely my number one, by far, by the way.
My number one is Khan Noonien Singh. Not really. It's
none of us bought that. Again,
I wasn't giving you anything on that.
This is an audio podcast. This is an audio podcast, so they can't see. But Ian and I just went neutral.
Keep the silence, please. Don't cut that.
no
joke, but we didn't. We didn't give it to you.
We've covered him. Gul Madred, Chain of Command, is my number one. As we have previously said, I like darker episodes. I think this is probably the most chilling performance in the whole of Star Trek. We're aware that the Cardassian-Bajor conflict is essentially, an allegory for Nazis and the Jews, any kind of oppression of another race. And I think it's really clearly laid out here. I see Madred as Star Trek's version of Joseph Mengele, who ran Auschwitz. Interestingly, watching Zone of Interest, the film, really reminded me
Great film.
For me, it's the cold normalcy with which he treats Picard's psychological and physical torture. Yeah, it's that I find that's just so upsetting. And whatever empathy that he has, he uses it as a form of calculated and subtle coercion. And how he is bringing up his daughter to just ignore that there is this tortured slave in the background, it's just hugely disturbing, and it will always stick in my mind, that episode, always, and particularly Warner's performance. I'd have to say it's alongside. It has to be alongside Patrick Stewart.
A duet.
We've all praised the two key guest actors and characters in this double episode, both Ronnie Cox and David Warner, and I think that's no coincidence, is it? We all also agree that it's not a fun watch, but it may be one of the single most compelling watches Star Trek has done.
Agreed.
Excellent. The point is there's loads.
Yeah,
and
it's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, look, how many episodes we can pick from, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hundreds of episodes. So there's going to be dozens, if not 100 performances that we're choosing from.
Yeah. And to an actor, class acts. All of our choices. Exemplary thesps, and just absolutely brilliant. So and crucially brought the best out of all of the regulars. So what do you think of our choices for favourite guest stars, guest characters, and one rule-breaking suggestion by yours truly? Let us know. You can email us. All the details are included in the description of the episode. Let us know your top 7 guest stars, and feel free to critique ours, and I'll happily take support for including Khan. Just saying. Thank you both, as ever, for a really interesting, stimulating conversation that yet again shows the depth of this franchise and why it's still worth talking about, even the older stuff, as Star Trek nears its 60th anniversary of existence. And we'll see you next episode, Beyond the Final Frontier.
Peace, love, and logic, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Final Frontier, a Star Trek podcast with Rich Matthews, Ian Spelling and Toby Weidman. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us on beyondffpod@gmail.com or check us out on social media. You can even join our Patreon at BFF Beyond the Final Frontier. Huge thanks go out to Alex Weidman for the brilliant original music. Please search Alex Weidman Composer on YouTube to hear the full fantastic theme and more. Also thanks goes to award-winning voiceover artist Cissy Jones for our excellent opening monologue. Find out more about her incredible work at cissyjones.com. And of course, last but not least, our brilliant artwork comes from the designer Russell Seal. Discover more of his work on behance.net/Russell Seal. Thanks again and see you next episode, Beyond the Final Frontier.